You're listening to a podcast from the BBC World Service. This is Hard Talk with me, Zainab Badawi. Thanks for downloading this edition of the programme, and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Hard Talk on the BBC World Service with me, Zainab Badawi. My guest today is funny. She's Maysoon Zayid, a comedian, actor and a disability advocate. She was born in the United States to Palestinian immigrant parents and since birth has been living with cerebral palsy, a condition which affects the brain and nervous system. She believes comedy has the power to transform the lives of disabled people. She also says her stand-up comedy shows help normalise the perceptions of Muslims when many seek to demonise them. Can comedy really do all that? And where do you draw the line between what's funny and what's unacceptable? Maysoon Zayid, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I really want to shake your hand, but I shake too much to shake.
I will consider it done. Maysoon Zayid, you've said if there were an oppression Olympics, you would win the gold medal.
Yes.
Why did you say that?
I would definitely win the gold medal because I'm Palestinian, I'm Muslim, I'm a woman of color, I'm disabled, and I live in Donald Trump's America. You don't get more oppressed than that.
We'll come to Donald Trump's America perhaps a little bit later, but just explain to us, what does it mean to have cerebral palsy?
So in my case, my cerebral palsy is a result of Dr. Era. The doctor who delivered me was drunk, and so now I appear to be drunk for my entire life, even when I'm sober. In my case, my CP makes me shake all the time, and it affects my coordination. It's a neurological disorder that affects muscle coordination, but it exhibits differently in different people with CP.
Mm-hmm. And you have said, however, I have 99 problems, and cerebral palsy is just one of them. Have you always had such a positive attitude towards your condition, and where does that come from?
I have always had a positive attitude towards my condition because I was raised as an equal by my parents. My parents acknowledged my disability, they accommodated my disability, but they didn't focus on it. So whatever my sisters had to do, I had to do. If my sisters were cleaning, I was going to be cleaning. If they went to public school, my parents fought and made sure that I too could go to public school. And when I was born, the doctors told my parents that I would never walk. Now, this is something really important. There's no shame in not walking. There's no shame in using a wheelchair or a walker or a cane. And sometimes people use the word wheelchair bound. That term is incorrect. Mobility devices free people. But when I was growing up, my father was aware that I'd be spending time in two separate worlds, in America and also in the West Bank. So he was determined to teach me how to walk. And he did.
So you derive that kind of positive attitude from your very close-knit Palestinian family, in particular your late father?
Yes.
It was he who encouraged you, was it?
My father encouraged me and my mother strengthened me. My mother's a tiger mom, so she showed no mercy. The other day I was on TV, I called my mom, I said, "What'd you think?" She said, "Your hair looked terrible." And it did. And I was glad she told me because I learned for the next time. My father was my cheerleader and he had a mantra, and his mantra was, "You can do it, yes you can." And he really believed that I could do anything I dreamt of and encouraged me to take chances and also to accept when I couldn't.
And you've spoken of how you would walk on your father's feet so that you could learn how to walk, and he'd be dangling a dollar note before you in order to entice you into walking as much as possible. I mean, that's just one small example of how you do make jokes about having cerebral palsy.
And also how he approached it in a fun way. You know, I always say I walked miles on my father's shoes, but the dollar bill was really what worked the best for me because my inner stripper was so strong that I was running in stilettos by kindergarten.
But do you think that, you know, that kind of approach, talking about it in that way, perhaps might to some people strike them as that you're making light of something which, after all, is quite serious and is restricting for many people because of the way society deals with people with disabilities?
I think that talking about my disability honestly and with humor makes it more accessible and less frightening for people. And I think that applies to people with disabilities and also to caretakers and parents. I think it's so important that we destigmatize disability. My disability is visible, but there's also so many invisible disabilities. And the stigma around disability is real. When someone is pregnant, the very first thing people tell them is, I hope it's healthy. We don't acknowledge the fact that there's a chance that it won't be. And what I want is for people to see that regardless of what disability a person has, they still have potential. They can still have joy. They can still have love. I often say people think of people with disabilities as happy snowflake angel babies that never grow up and don't get married and don't have kids. And we have the potential to live full lives, whether we're verbal, nonverbal, mobile, not mobile. And I think that by approaching my disability the way I would any of my other 99 problems, it empowers people to be loud and proud about their disability and to not fear disability in others.
But when you saw your more able-bodied sisters, and you saw how you perhaps couldn't do everything that they could, or did you feel in any way angry or frustrated at any time?
I didn't really feel otherized or disabled until I got to college, until I finished high school, because in addition to my family, my friends were very supportive. I've had the same best friends since I was 5 years old.
You were in a mainstream school, and that for you is very important.
Yes. My parents had to fight for me to be in a mainstream school. When I went to start school, they wanted to send me to a special school for children with Down syndrome. And my parents fought to have me mainstreamed. I believe that if they hadn't fought for my education, I wouldn't be sitting here on Hard Talk with you right now. And I think that one of the most important things in the world is to make sure that children with disabilities worldwide,
including those with Down syndrome,
Down syndrome, nonverbal, intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, we all have a right to education. And sure, not everyone's going to be a heart surgeon. I certainly don't have the coordination, but we need to give people the potential to learn.
But as I said, you've made, a living from being a stand-up comedian and making jokes about your disabilities. One of your jokes is the one about the car park.
I say that most people have dreamt of being disabled at some point in their life, because if you come on a journey with me and it's Christmas Eve and you're driving around looking for parking, what do you see? 16 empty handicap spaces. And you wish to yourself, can I just be a little disabled, like bone spurs or something? But also, there's a flip side to that, which is I always use the disabled parking. And some people don't realize that I'm disabled. So we have to understand that disability doesn't all look the same in every person.
Sure, but making jokes like that, it takes a lot of skill to take on what for some people is a bit of a taboo subject. So where do you draw the line between humour and what ends up, just making fun of somebody with disabilities, mocking them almost?
I tell personal stories. And because I'm telling a personal story, I don't believe that there's a line that I can cross. Comedy is taking risks. Comedy, you're always pushing that line.
Where is that line? Is it when you say what your jokes might encourage somebody to mock a person with disabilities? Or
the line that I draw is that I don't find humor in cruelty, because I want my audience to be happy and to laugh. I don't want to invoke their darkest memories. I don't want to invoke traumas and abuse and pain. And it's not censorship. It's always putting my audience first. I want them to laugh.
Because I tell you, the British comedy actor Ricky Gervais, who's made jokes about a dead baby, says outside actually breaking the law or causing someone actual physical harm, hurting someone's feelings is almost impossible to objectively quantify.
I absolutely agree with that. Anything can be funny, and that comedy is subjective. When I say that I make choices because I don't find being abusive funny. If someone else can take something super traumatic and make it funny, it's their right to do so and try so.
Do you think you have more of a right, in a way, to make comedy about people with disabilities because you are somebody with disabilities yourself? For example, the late American comedian Joan Rivers made jokes about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And she said, look, that's okay because I'm Jewish, she said.
I feel the same way about disability. I don't find it entertaining or humorous when comedians who don't have disabilities mock disabilities or imitate disabilities. Disability is part of who I am. It's my community.
So it gives you a right.
And it gives me,
you can go
it gives
further.
Me a right. It gives me the same right that a person of color has a right to talk about being a person of color. Having a disability, it gives me the right to talk about it, but I never pretend that disability is a monolith. I can talk about physical disability, but I have no right to go on stage and mock an intellectual disability just because I happen to be disabled. I think the fact that I have a personal connection allows me to talk about it in a way that others shouldn't, honestly.
You have actually ended up on social media being the object of bullying. You've been called Gumby-mouthed and other things. I mean, that's the kind of risk you run, isn't it?
I've been subjected to a lot of bullying online, and in the past 2 years, I've been subjected to death threats. And I often talk to the guys that do comedy with me, and I ask them, do you get threats like I do? And they never do. They have people saying that they want to punch them. I have people saying, I'm going to rape you so that your father honor kills you. So it's a deep, deep, frightening world out there, but I refuse to be silenced. And the reason I refuse to be silenced is, while I was subjected to bullying, I talked about it in my TED Talk. When I did, I had women, teens, girls worldwide reach out to me and say, I've been bullied. I've had fear, and knowing that you survived it gives me the power to survive it too.
You respond to them, don't you, sometimes? Why not just ignore them?
Well, I'm a comedian, and we grew up in comedy clubs being heckled. And when someone heckles you, you have to take them down. It's a natural instinct. Mm-hmm. So I have a process, and my process is, first I try to educate, because you wouldn't believe how many people are genuinely ignorant. If they fail to learn, then I mock them on social media.
But you get upset by it. You are upset by it too, by the bullying.
I'm upset by the death threats. I'm disturbed by the bullying. The bullying doesn't make me go on screen and be self-conscious about my wiggling lip or the fact that I slur a bit. The bullying makes me go on screen and go, I'm on TV and you're not, darling.
Doesn't
it
make
kind
you
of empowers me.
But you don't think to yourself at any time, I wish I hadn't sought such a high profile, or you just accept that's part of the price you have to pay?
I think that if I had grown up with social media, I would never step foot on television. But now it's my destiny, and I'm not going to let anyone take me down.
But why not just forget your disabilities and carry on, you know, leading your life? I mean, I'll tell you what one British comedian, Francesca Martinez, has said about her cerebral palsy. She says, I've accepted my cerebral palsy. I'd wasted years worrying about the way I walked or talked. She says she's no longer defined by cerebral palsy. She says, a quick look outside my own tiny world was enough for me to feel guilty. Millions of others live in war and poverty and without clean water, food or shelter.
Disability is not a monolith. Cerebral palsy doesn't define me, but it's a huge part of who I am. I accept it, but it's a part of my story, and I'm happy to include it in my comedy because it's part of who I am. It's a real thing. I want to take a drink of water right now. I can't. I need a straw. That's a reality. Pretending that it's not a reality does nothing to lessen its impact on my life.
You went to Arizona State University and you studied drama there, and you've said how you were very disappointed when there was a role in a drama which needed somebody with cerebral palsy and they cast an able-bodied person in the role.
So I was a straight A student in theater. I knew that I had talent. I knew that I was a good actress, and I knew that I wasn't getting cast, but I couldn't figure out why. So senior year, when they had a show about a girl with cerebral palsy, I was like, I was literally born to play this. And then I didn't get the role. And when I asked why, they said it was because I couldn't do the stunts. And the reality was, the university was reflecting Hollywood. Hollywood shuns people with disabilities. We are, by far, the largest minority in the world. We're 20% of the population. And we're only 2% of the images you see on American television, and of those 2%, 95% are played by non-disabled actors. A lot of us in the disability community find it very, very offensive for a non-disabled actor to play a visible disability on screen.
Do you think, yeah,
we think of it like race. It's not something that you can act. It's not, when someone plays cerebral palsy and they're twitching and flailing about, that's not what the disability is, and it's offensive, it's inauthentic, and it takes away our opportunities.
So as well as being someone with disabilities, you're also an Arab American, and another way you've tried to use your comedy is to try to normalize the perceptions of Muslims when many are really seeking to demonize them. And in 2003, you co-founded the New York Arab American Comedy Festival. You traveled all over the world to showcase the talents of Arab Americans right across the entertainment industry. Do you feel that Arab or Muslims in the entertainment industry are also getting a raw deal?
Yeah, I mean, starting off with Arabs, right, because Arab and Muslim isn't synonymous. Arabs were trailblazers in American comedy. We had Danny Thomas and Jamie Farr. We were these great comedic figures. Post 9/11, we became caricatures of terrorists and nothing more. And so that was something that I was really concerned about shifting and giving Arabs the opportunity to be seen on screen as something other than a taxi driver or a terrorist. But also, being a person of color is a challenge, and Arab is considered a person of color, so you have to break through that barrier.
But you know,
Islam, go ahead.
I was going to say, couldn't it be an advantage? Because one Arab actor, Amru Al-Qadi, said recently that when he complained about being depicted as a terrorist and saying that this was racial profiling, he was told, you're lucky and you could use your ethnicity as a play card in an industry where white actors are overlooked. So it can be an advantage too, can't it?
That's an obscene comment that people even consider that being a minority in Hollywood is a good thing. It's not. We're still completely outnumbered.
But you do quite well. I mean, it's not just Umar al-Sharif, the late Umar al-Sharif. I mean, there's Salma Hayek, who's got Arab heritage. There's Wendy Malick, Tony Shalhoub, Rami Malek won an Emmy for the thriller Mr. Robot. I mean, there are some who've made their names.
Rami Malek put on screen by an Arab, Sam Ismail. Wendy and Tony, definitely trailblazers. People break through, no matter who they are. There are always exceptions to the rule. But the reality is, I certainly haven't been given that opportunity. I had to write my own TV show to get on television. I have a deal for my own sitcom called If I Can with Universal Studios. I can't even get a guest role to practice before I star in my own show. That is how much discrimination there is. So when we have breakthrough stars, when we have people who defy the odds, it's because they defy the odds. It's not because there are genuinely more opportunities for minorities than white people on television, especially with disability.
You said Arab and Muslim, of course, are not synonymous, and you're absolutely right, of course. But when it comes to the way Muslims are perceived, the actor, American actor Samuel L. Jackson, on Muslims in Hollywood, says young Muslim Americans need to start telling their stories in the same way that African Americans fought and found ways to make films about their lives and experiences. Do you see people doing that? Is that happening?
I do.
It should be.
I absolutely see people doing that, and I'm one of the people who is doing that. And I think I have a real privilege as a Muslim, because as a Muslim woman, I am not what people picture when they think of a Muslim woman. But I represent a lot of other Muslim women. Not every Muslim woman chooses to cover. Most Muslim women are not being oppressed in America where I live and where I grow up. So I think it's a great opportunity for me to have written a show with a Muslim family as a centerpiece, where the father is devout, the mother is a doctor who doesn't believe in God, to show that Muslims are, again, not a monolith. We're not all these one-note screaming terrorists that were depicted as on television, that Muslim women do look like me, that you can be devout, you can have faith, and still live 100% acclimated to the American lifestyle. And I think right now they're trying to otherize us, and people think that Muslims were born somewhere else. So people always say to me, go back to your own country. And I say, where, New Jersey? Or they tell me I need to accept Jesus. And I tell them, I do accept Jesus. He's a prophet in Islam. Can you accept that Jesus looks like me and not you?
But I mean, despite your initial comment very early on about, living in Donald Trump's America, when you look at all the censuses, opinion polls and so on, Arab Americans, not necessarily Muslim Americans, are actually quite well integrated as US citizens.
Yeah.
And, when you look at the indices, they're better off than, the average person in the population. They've got high educational achievements and that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's not all bad, is it?
No, it's not all bad. And again, Arab is not a monolith. Some of us are more integrated, some of us are less integrated, but also 80% of Arab Americans are Christian. And that has an effect on their ability to blend into
society. So you see
society.
the problem as more a Muslim one than an Arab one?
Currently, I see it much more as a Muslim one, and that's different than a decade ago. Right now, it is absolutely terrifying to be Muslim in America.
Why?
Why? We're under siege every day. Hate against Muslims is mainstreamed. Courts agree with hate against Muslims, and we're not really given a voice to combat the negative images that are being displayed of us.
Do you experience it personally yourself?
Every
this
single day.
anti-Muslim sentiment, really?
I feel the anti-Muslim sentiment every single day. And
In what way?
I was living in the New York area post 9/11, and I never felt this kind of hate and backlash and dehumanization. I mean, first of all, I do find it very disturbing that an American president can invoke and incite violence against Muslims without any ramifications. And it makes
He wouldn't say that. He just says, are you referring to the videos that he
I'm referring to
replayed,
the
for
rhetoric
instance?
and the videos.
Because, I mean, he would just say, look, I'm just stating facts that there is a problem with terrorism that's committed by people of the Muslim faith, and I'm just stating facts. That's what he said.
But he's not actually stating facts. So as someone who's watching it, I know that he's inciting violence against me. I know that he's ignoring the true dangers in America. I mean, in Las Vegas, 600 people were shot. That's a true risk.
Finally, you go to the Palestinian territories, you've worked with refugees, bringing comedy as a kind of therapy to change people's lives. You've talked about how you use comedy for people with disabilities or about people with disabilities, Muslim Americans, that kind of thing. Does comedy really have the power to do all that, to transform lives and attitudes in society?
Comedy absolutely has the power to transform lives. I always say, if someone's laughing at you, they're less likely to kill you. But also, if someone's laughing, they're more likely to understand something that they never understood before. Because there's a difference between lecturing a person or yelling at a person for saying something ignorant and getting on stage, doing a joke, and having them realize, uh-oh, I'm the bigot. I'm the one that didn't know the facts. I'm the one who judged them all. This woman is Muslim, and clearly there's no reason for me to hate her, so maybe there's more like her. When I do it worldwide, it's less about Islam and more about the disability, because when I do comedy worldwide, I'm putting out an image a lot of people have never seen. A functional, independent, disabled person. And it lets them know they have the potential, or their child has the potential to excel in the same way that I have.
Maysoon Zayid, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk. This edition of Hard Talk was presented by me, Zayid Badawi. For details of our complete range of podcasts and our terms of use, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.